Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 25 mini-series with the Seattle Mariners. And we are moving along in the 2026 to 2027 offseason. Free agency filings were today, but we're probably not going to be real active in free agency this year. We did trade away our starting catcher from last year, Cal Raleigh, along with a couple of other players. We got Austin Wells in return from the Yankees, so Wells is going to slide into first base. And last year's Gold Glove winning first baseman slash third baseman, Harry Ford, in his second full year in the majors, will slide in to be our starting catcher. So not really anticipating any big changes to the roster at this point. We will be losing our number 5 starter from last season, Lance McCullers Jr., who's in his mid-30s and looking for over $20 million a year. Just had no opportunity to realistically bring him back. So we made a qualifying offer to him, which he refused. So that leaves us with a little bit of hole in the rotation. But Brian Wu has been a starter for us primarily in the first 2 years of this playthrough, moved into more of a bullpen role a year ago, but think he's a more than capable 5th starter. That said, and even with the fact that we do have a pretty good bullpen, as you can see here, if we're going to do anything in free agency this year, it's probably going to be adding a pitcher. But we've only got a little bit over $11 million, and I think at this point we're likely to not do much at all for the first month or two of free agency, see if maybe we can pick up someone interesting in the Rule 5 draft in a few weeks. And then if there's bargains to be had in the coming months and or someone really lingers on the free agent market for a long period of time, we'll investigate bringing them on board. There's also several international free agents this year, most of whom are looking for more money than we can afford. But if the prices on any of them come down, that could be an option for us as well. And we've made it to the Rule 5 draft, have not made an offer to anyone in free agency at this point. I think once again we have some pretty solid veteran 4A kind of players in AAA for us, so it's possible we'll lose a few players in the draft that we didn't want to guarantee major league money to by putting on the 40-man roster. We're willing to accept that. Coming off of the great 112-win season, we will be picking last in the Rule 5 draft, but perhaps we'll be able to find a pitcher who can compete to be in our bullpen. We found some pitchers in the first few years of this playthrough who have helped us in the Rule 5 draft, and given that pitching is the area that we may focus on a little more this offseason than last offseason, let's hope that there's a decent pitcher available for us. And we made it to our pick. I may have underestimated the amount of veteran talent that we had collected in the upper levels of our organization, because we have had a ridiculous 10 players picked from our Mariners in the first round of this draft. I guess the number is shocking. As I talked about not that long ago, I figured we would be losing some players, but we've apparently built up an incredible amount of talent. One of the things that always bothers me a little bit about OOTP is Keston Hiura, who we signed as a minor league free agent before last season. He did have a really nice year for us in AAA with 51 homers and 103 ribbies, but he never actually played for Seattle at the major league level. And when you look at this profile, he's not as good as the players who are on our 26-man roster at this point, but the fans were very upset that Hiura left. Fan interest almost crashed, and we actually lost 2 points of fan interest off a 112-win team because a 30-year-old minor leaguer was acquired from us in the Rule 5 draft. It still seems like this feature of the game is rather blunt, but it is what it is at this point. Hopefully one of the years that will be refined a bit by the developers, since ultimately that fan interest metric combined with the market size and the fan loyalty is a pretty key driver of your ultimate attendance at the game and ultimately your finances. And unfortunately, there's not really anyone all that interesting available in the Rule 5 draft this year. We're still going to take a flyer on a pitcher. Our scout recommends we do nothing, but we're going to bring in Zach Brzezicki, 27-year-old, has had a very small sample size in the majors in his career. Was up with Toronto in 2025. Was not good. 67 ERA plus, 139 FIP minus. Do like his stuff with a really good curveball and a fastball. His movement is okay. The control a potential issue. But as a right-handed pitcher pitching in Seattle, I think the fact that his movement's a little above average will be more than sufficient, given that it's not the easiest park to hit home runs in, even though he does have fly ball tendencies. Don't know that he's going to actually make our squad, but always like to bring in a little bit of extra depth. So we're going to go ahead and draft Zach. Probably going to be the only player that we pick. There's just not an impressive crew here. We'll see what happens through the rest of the draft, but I think that might be the only selection that we make. And it ended up being a very active Rule 5 draft. We did lose a couple other players, Ahmed Rosario and Cody Bolton. The Houston Astros, strangely active. They ended up picking players in all 9, or not all, but in 9 rounds of the Rule 5 draft. Can't imagine that they're going to be retaining most of them. They definitely had a disappointing year for the Astros this year at 79 and 83. But the team was not a complete disaster, so kind of interesting that they picked 9 guys in the Rule 5. And we made it to the start of the international amateur free agent signing period. I think similar to last year, we're going to be a little bit aggressive and try to pick 2 players that we really like, overwhelm them with offers a bit more than they're looking for right at the start, and see if maybe we can land a couple of big-time prospects. One of our goals is to continue improving this farm system of ours, which is middle of the pack at this point. Ayala, Cuellar, and Contreras, the top 3 prospects in the organization, are players that we picked up in the first 2 IAFA periods that we have gone through with this Mariners squad. Ayala 2 years ago, and Cuellar and Contreras this past year. Would love to pick up another duo similar to Cuellar and Contreras this time around. And we're going to go hard after a couple of infielders. The first one is Luis Montes, shortstop out of Venezuela. Like the high work ethic, like the potential for an exceptional left-handed hitting middle infielder if he fully develops. Not a perfect shortstop. Honestly, his best position would probably be at third base, but he does have a bat that could certainly reside at third base if that's where Godzilla ends up down the line. We're going to make an offer to him. He's looking for $2.2 million. As I said, we're going to come in strong. Says he really likes our organization and would like to come play for us. They always kind of say that. They always try to pull at my heartstrings, but we're going to offer him $2.75 million and try to just overwhelm him right at the start of this IAFA period and get him on board. The other guy that we're going to offer is Juan Almazo, who actually is listed as a third baseman, and looking at his ratings, he's really a third baseman or a first baseman. He could also play corner outfield, but another guy with a really interesting left-handed bat, like the high work ethic and intelligence. We don't have as strong a relationship with Almazo as we do with some of the other top prospects who we've had in our camps on a regular basis, but still think that he would be a nice guy to potentially pair with Montez. So we are going to go ahead and offer him $1.8 million and see if maybe we can lock both of these guys up early before the bidding gets too intense. And we've simmed ahead a few days. Montez says he favors our offer, and we've already signed Alzano. So we've got one of the potential third basemen signed. The one that we liked a little more is the one who's still out there. So we could potentially have put ourselves in a situation where we may not be able to get Montez if the price goes too high. But Almazo for $1.8 million signing bonus is a very interesting prospect to bring into our system. And we've got Montez signed as well, so things went perfectly for us. I don't know if the last 2 years are just really good luck, or this seems to be a potential hack, so to speak, in how to handle IAFAs in OOTP 25, but 2 straight years we've picked up 2 5-star potential prospects in these relatively deep classes by just coming in strong with initial offers. Got 2 big guys signed, $680,000 left to spend, so we're going to go shopping at the little lower end of the market with that last bit of money that we have left. And it's a good day here on January 30th and 31st. I got another prospect signed. Dionisio Diodoni gave him $500,000 to join the organization, so used up most of the IAFA money we have left. Think he could be an interesting right-handed relief prospect down the line. And glad that we gave that qualifying offer to Lance McCullers Jr. because we're going to get a supplemental first-round pick for his signing. So he obviously went somewhere for some pretty good money and some pretty good years. Yeah, 5 years, $117 million. So worked out well for McCullers Jr. to reject our QO. As I noted, we really couldn't afford to bring him back anyways. But he is 33 years old. He's fragile. Wish him the best of luck with the Twins, but I think it's unlikely that he's going to be putting up consistently the type of seasons that he gave us last year when he was 13-4 with a 2.79 ERA. And we've simmed ahead to early February now. We're still a few weeks away from the start of spring training, but we're going to start perhaps trying to rebuild those AA and AAA teams that were hit so hard by the Rule 5 draft this year. Also, don't really think there's anyone among the top position players who are left on the market that really fit us. As I addressed, I kind of think we've got our team and our backups largely set for our 13 position players. We could still use some help at pitcher. The market has definitely thinned out. Most of the players have been signed. Dylan Cease is the only 3-star rated player still on the market. Certainly his outstanding stuff, plus movement, his control is not optimal, but he would certainly potentially slot in for us as a really nice number 5 starter, still throws in the very high 90s. He's looking for a little more than I'd like to spend right now at $8.5 million. But if the price on him comes down the next few weeks, he may be a guy that we take a flyer on. As I noted at the start of the episode, I'd be perfectly comfortable with Wu as our 5th starter. But if we can bring on someone with the stuff that Cease has to fill that role and move Wu back into the bullpen where he was pretty effective for us a year ago, just gives us even more options and resilience in our overall pitching staff if we do have some injuries down the line. checking in on player development. We focused the development lab this year on major leaguers, and you can see right now we've only got a couple of people who are on track with their progress, still 2 to 3 weeks away from the finish of all of these long programs that were focused on major leaguers. Felt with the programs that we were doing that we weren't necessarily going to have a high success rate as high as we have the last couple of years, but given that we're a win now team, hopefully more than 2 of these programs will be successful when all is said and done. And we're just a few days from the start of spring training. Cease is still on the market. He's still looking for $8.5 million a year, and he's looking for that amount over 4 years. I'm going to continue to be patient. It's very possible he's going to sign with somebody else over the next few days as camps are getting started. But if we're able to maybe in a couple of weeks, if he's still on the market, potentially pick him up for 3 years, $6 million-ish a year with team options, I think at that point we'll take a flyer on him. I think he'd be a bit of an upgrade over Brian Wu. Not a huge upgrade, admittedly. Over the course of his career, he's been a slightly above average starting pitcher, at least in terms of his ERA plus, and he's been the definition of average in terms of his FIP minus. He's been a bit below average consistently for the last 3 years. So we're not going to chase him, but think he could be a pretty useful arm for the back end of our rotation if we can get him at the right price. If not, we'll head into the season with pretty much all the money that we potentially had to spend, which I think will be fine because that could give us the flexibility to take on some contracts as we get closer to the trade deadline. And given that this is a win now team, I think we'd be happy to add some talent if really all we got to do is pay somebody's salary. And we've made it to the start of spring training, just 1 day away from finding out how the development lab went. Looks like we could have a pretty low success rate, but we'll find out for sure tomorrow. May only have a couple successful programs among the 8 that we tried. Thinking about the free agent market, Dylan Cease is still out there. He's only dropped his demand to $8 million from $8.5 million. But the interesting thing is that he's now only looking for a 1-year deal. So I'm not going to offer him $8 million. I'm still going to play hardball with him, but want to at least get the discussion going. I don't think he's going to be excited about a $5 million offer, especially because his personality indicates that he is very financially ambitious. We will give him a bigger bonus if he does get to 160 innings. I don't think there's any way he's going to accept this, but want to at least let him know that the Mariners are out there if he's looking for a job. Interesting. He says he's willing to do $5.3 million if we give him a spot in the starting rotation. That's kind of what we intend for him, so we'll pay you $5 million for this upcoming year. And we'll even guarantee you a spot in the starting rotation, because honestly, if we have to take you out of the rotation, it's just a 1-year deal anyways. He's willing to think about it. I think that would be a nice deal for us for a 5th starter. We've got the money to make it happen. And we'd still have a decent amount of money available for bringing on some guys to fill in whatever gaps there are on this team as we get into the season. And as we kind of anticipated, only 2 successful programs. Andres Munoz improved his pitch movement, so that should help him in the closer role. And Julio Rodriguez improved his ability to generate more bat speed and home run power. That was not a high probability scenario, but you throw enough You throw enough things out there and some of them will work. Looking at his ratings, you can't really see it, but I'm sure if we looked in and we actually knew where his power was before, that might have, I'm sure the improvement would show up there, but we didn't check it out beforehand. But feel good that a guy who's been an MVP once in 3 years with us, 37 homers that year, 41 a year ago, and he, in theory, has even more power now than before. So wasn't an incredible success rate for us, but it was still a fruitful player development lab in terms of some improvement from J-Rod as well as Andres Munoz. And not surprisingly, Dylan Cease and his high financial ambition are looking for more money. Says he's only looking for $5.8 million. We'll see what he thinks for $5.5 million. I don't know if we're going to go higher than that. He says he'll think about it. We'll find out in the coming days. And Cease has come back to us again saying that he wants more money. $6.6 million is what he claims he wants. I think we're going to let him go. He's going to be our 5th starter. I tend to think there will be some opportunities on the trade market to eventually get someone, if we need someone for that 5th starter role, who is as good, if not better than Cease, as we get closer to the trade deadline. So if we could have gotten him at our price, I'd be more inclined to do it. But we're going to let him sign with somebody else if that's what he decides to do, which he probably will. The trade block is not overwhelming in terms of the talent on it right now, but it's also March 1st. You wouldn't necessarily expect it to be. When we look at the pitchers who are available, Jordan Montgomery, the highest rated guy out there. The Cardinals are still looking for a lot for him, but that could certainly change as we get closer to the trade deadline. Interestingly, among the batters, you may remember Hae-Sung Kim. He was a international free agent, I believe. Actually, he wasn't. Now I'm confusing him with somebody else. But he was a free agent a couple years ago that we did look at and consider. Didn't end up going that way. Didn't really have the money to bring him on board. But if they're ultimately willing to take a big chunk of his contract as we get closer to the trade deadline, that could be someone for us to think about also. Not hoping that we have any injuries in the infield, but you never know. And we've simmed ahead another couple weeks. We haven't heard anything else from Cease. He's still claiming he's got a better deal. It still says he wants $8 million, but he actually has not signed anywhere. We're going to continue waiting him out. If we can get him at our price, great. But we're not going to chase him. And some bad news as we're heading into the final week of spring training. This is one that will hurt a bit, literally and figuratively, but J-Rod going to be out with a strained MCL for 5 weeks. So that is certainly not optimal to have our all-star center fielder, 26-year-old, who's already won an MVP award and is a perennial all-star, perennial Silver Slugger winner, out for the first month or so of the season. But we've got a deep roster, and hopefully we'll be able to remain competitive even without our cleanup hitter. And as we get to the end of spring training, we did not blink, but the Los Angeles Angels did. Cease had supposedly dropped his demand to $7 million, and the Angels ended up signing him to a 1-year deal for $12.3 million. So sometimes that high financial ambition pays off for the players, and it looks like it did in this case for Mr. Cease. And we've made it through the end of spring training. The only material injury is J-Rod, who's out 3 to 4 weeks to start the season. So that will certainly leave a significant hole in the middle of our lineup for the next month or so. No real surprises with our 5 starters. Castillo, coming off of the brilliant Cy Young Award winning season a year ago, will be our #1 starter, followed by Kirby, Savale, and Gilbert, all holdovers. And Brian Wu goes back into the rotation after spending most of last year in the bullpen. The guys to kind of close out the last few innings of the games where we have leads are all the same as a year ago. Munoz back as our closer, Santos as our stopper, and Matt Brash and Gabe Spire as setup men. The rest of the bullpen, a little different looking. Bryce Miller is back in a long relief role, and he'll be our emergency starter. Bennett Souza is back as a left-handed specialist. But 2 new additions, one of which is a familiar name, Nick Enright, who was a Rule 5 pick a couple of years ago, spent most of last year in Tacoma after we picked up his rights by the fact he was on the major league team all of last year. Did a good job in a small sample size with us in the majors last year. And then another Rule 5 pick, the one Rule 5 pick we had in this past draft, Zach Brzezicki. We're going to give him a shot. He's been mixed results, more negative than positive in that one opportunity he had with Toronto a couple years ago. So certainly feel like the 12th, 13th guys on this staff can probably be upgraded, and probably not as deep a pitching staff as it was a year ago, but still kind of interested in seeing how everybody does. If Brzezicki, Enright, Souza, Miller, those kind of guys struggle, there's no one who we've got a huge financial commitment to that we wouldn't be able to move on from. And as we've talked about, we've got pretty good financial flexibility with almost $10.5 million available right now, even with another modest increase to our scouting and player development budgets as we get ready for the beginning of the season. With the injury to J-Rod, that allowed us to keep an extra player on the team. No huge surprises. Harry Ford, our starting catcher. Stevenson will be his backup. William Lugo and Austin Wells are going to be platooning at first. Oslevis Basabe and Cole Young are going to be platooning at second. Gleyber Torres at third. Bo Bichette at short. Julio Carreras and William Lugo are the 2 guys whose roster spots were uncertain, and they both ended up making the team as infielders with the injury to J-Rod. Carreras will be getting playing time as a third baseman against left-handed pitching, and we're actually going to move Gleyber into a left field role then. Hunter Renfroe, his range in the outfield is rapidly declining at the age of 35. His overall ratings aren't great. His speed is gone, but we still think he can be a pretty competent bat against left-handed pitching, so he's going to remain in the lineup as our DH there. Josh Lowe is going to be our center fielder against both righties and lefties while Mr. J-Rod is out. MJ Melendez is going to be our cleanup hitter, play right field against righties. And Soto obviously will be in the lineup every day, #3 hitter in DH against righties, and he'll bat cleanup and play right field against lefties. So certainly the loss of J-Rod weakens the batting order a bit because Basabe would not be in the lineup against righties, and Carreras or Lowe would not be in the lineup against left-handed pitching if we were fully and completely healthy, but we're not at this point. But that's okay, because I still think we've got a pretty good roster put together here for this 2027 season. And we've made it to opening day. We'll see the preseason predictions here. Expected to not be as good as we were a year ago. 92-70 record. That would be tied for the best in the American League in this simulation, but still 20 games worse than we were in that brilliant season we had last year. Looking at the projections, Luis Castillo expected to have a good, solid year for us, but not quite the Triple Crown pitching season he had a year ago, and not expected to have anyone among the top hitters in this league, at least in this simulation. Hopefully that will prove otherwise. I'm expecting another big year out of Mr. Soto, and even though J-Rod's going to miss a couple weeks, expect a strong year from him offensively as well. As we sit here on April 1st, J-Rod just 3 weeks away now from that strained MCL on a potential return. So the rest of the team is healthy. It's not a perfect lineup. As I noted, I think we could use some help in the bullpen, and definitely feel like we are a very important man down in terms of the everyday players with Julio Rodriguez being out. But he should be back soon. And as I've noted many times in this episode, we are going to have the financial flexibility to bring on some help as we get closer to the trade deadline. And we'll find out how the beginning of this 2027 season goes in our next episode. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.